Issue 1, gatekeepers be gone. Question. If we're all journalists because of blogs, and there are 70 million blogs in the world, and 120,000 new blogs launched every day worldwide, practically one every second, with that amount of clutter, what hope is there for anyone to break through? In other words, the vast majority of blogs are doomed to be niche media, small niche media, tiny, not mass media. And if you're so buried, how can you call yourself reasonably a journalist?
Well, let me make 2 points here that I've made repeatedly on my blog. The first is that most bloggers, most political bloggers, including myself, in fact, do not consider ourselves to be, quote, journalists. We don't call ourselves journalists, which invites the question, why does the mainstream media get so upset and agitated about bloggers and go to such great lengths to poo-poo them and to denigrate them? We're not in competition with mainstream media. Issue number 2 is the whole concept of a professional journalist. I reject wholesale the notion that journalism is a profession, and I say that as someone who is in not one but 2 professions. I am an attorney. That is a profession. I am an investment banker. That is a profession. What do I mean by profession? I'll explain it to you, and I've discussed this on my blog. Number 1, you don't need any special education to be a journalist. You can go to journalism school, but you don't have to. Number 2, there are no licensing exams, no qualifying competency exams. I know many of my fellow libertarians have issues with qualifying exams, but they exist. You have a bar exam, you have the CFA exam on Wall Street and other credentials. There's no test to become a journalist. There's no continuing ed. Physicians have to do continuing ed. Even dentists have to do continuing ed. Lawyers and investment professionals have to do continuing education. Journalists, to the best of my knowledge, don't. And most importantly, there is an ethics code. Lawyers have to abide by an ethics code. We violate it, we get punished, we get disbarred. Investment bankers too, believe it or not. You like to think they're greedy. But we have ethics codes. We have rules that if we violate, both our trade organizations, not to mention the regulators, will kick us out of the profession. That's not true with journalism. You can do whatever unethical things you want, and the best that will happen to you is that you might get reprimanded, you might get fired, but you don't lose your journalism license, you don't get sanctioned by a regulator, and I think that's great, First Amendment and all that. To me, the definition of a profession is that you have a credential, a law license, a medical license, a veterinary license. That's what makes a profession. Journalists don't have that.
Well, what about the term journalist? Does the term journalist apply to what they're doing?
I personally, as a blogger, try to rely as much as possible on wire feeds, mostly the Associated Press. Yes, I link to the New York Times. Yes, I link to the Washington Post. But I prefer to get my raw journalism myself and then process it myself and comment on it myself. And I think that's what gets the broadsheets so upset. The fact that it's not that we claim to be doing journalism in the sense that we're reporters. We don't pretend to be reporters, but we are taking the news that is reported and we are presenting and analyzing and commenting on it ourselves.
What's the constitutional significance of right guarantees for bloggers?
Well, there are 2 distinct issues. First of all, there are the traditional First Amendment concerns that apply to any form of communication of opinion. Of all the speeches that even the most anti-liberty jurists and thinkers will say, this kind of speech doesn't get protection, that kind of speech doesn't get protection. No one would dare say that political speech wasn't intended to be protected, and yet it's political speech that we're limiting through campaign finance reform, campaign limits, media stifling, and now, hopefully not, limits on bloggers.
Exit question. Let's assume that there is indeed a fusion of old and new media underway. Which of the 2 will be more dominant 25 years from now, a generation from now?
Oh, good grief, that's not even up for discussion. Newspaper print circulation statistics have been declining year in and year out for, I think, a decade or more, and it's going to keep going. The companies will still exist. You'll still have NewYorkTimes.com, Wall Street Journal on, online and so forth. I said something on my blog. I could have made it a prediction, I suppose, maybe I will. The idea that I'm not sure Rupert Murdoch bought Dow Jones to get the Wall Street Journal. I wonder if Rupert Murdoch bought Dow Jones to get the Dow Jones Newswire, which, like the Associated Press, is sort of this non-print, online, real-time, global news dissemination system, which even Fox doesn't really have. The Wall Street Journal is just sort of a crown jewel, and I wonder if it might not be disposed of someday after the merger is complete.
Issue 2, net reach. The YouTube video was catalytic and irrepressible. Question, why was it catalytic and irrepressible?
The video was the YouTube debate, it's not a debate, joint press conference, in which Barack Obama said that he would be willing to meet with dictators unconditionally immediately upon assuming office. We have so much election left to go. It's so far away, November 2008. It's August of 2007. We still have 16 months of campaigning. We even have 4 months or more till the primaries. So these things are going to come and go. I think the more catalytic issue is, when are we going to start to see the third tier and then the second tier candidates drop out on both sides? We'll see.
Exit question. In the presidential campaign next year, will the Internet dominantly contribute to an informed debate, or will the Internet dominantly spout effluent with a stream of negative attacks?
If the Internet is going to be nothing more than a string of negative attacks going into the campaign, it's going to be because the candidates make it so easy for us. I'll give you a quick example. Just yesterday I blogged about how Hillary Clinton promised and boasted that she was going to raise Social Security taxes. The only problem was she didn't say that. She never used the word tax, but she obviously said that she was going to raise taxes.
Issue 3, shield me. Question, is a shield law justified?
No, I'm on record on this. I've blogged about it. There should be no journalistic privilege because journalists are not a privileged profession. I think another issue that gets lost is who is being protected in other privileges. Attorney-client privilege is about protecting the client. Physician-patient privilege is about protecting the patient. Cleric-penitent privilege is about protecting the confessor. Journalist shield law is about protecting the journalist. It's exactly backwards. It doesn't make any sense. We have other mechanisms, especially when you're talking about whistleblowers. We have whistleblower protection laws when it's the government.
Exit question, will Congress pass a federal shield law this year, and if so, whose definition will it be? The broader definition or the more restricted definition?
No federal shield law. Too contentious. No way to get a version reconciled. I have no idea if the president would even be willing to sign one. As to the two definitions, the question basically is, does a journalist have to be paid or not? It's totally arbitrary. Could trigger First Amendment concerns about equal standing between, quote, professional journalists and bloggers.
Issue 4, old media still rules. Question, what's the real impact of the Internet on the world of media? And you can work somewhat with what Murdoch has shown us.
Again, I think you're seeing the decline of subscriber-based print media, the transition not only to online, but to more core reporting like you see from the newswires, Dow Jones, Associated Press, and so forth. Not these long, analytical kinds of stories. You'll still get commentary, you'll still have editorials, op-eds, but they're going to stay on the editorial page.
False prediction. Will newspapers flourish or die?
Newspapers will die. Newspaper companies will not necessarily die. They will transform into online media companies, much like Rupert Murdoch's News Corp.
Bye-bye.